"Daddy, are they going to take me away?" The question landed like a punch to Ethan Cole's chest. It was close to midnight, rain still rattling the apartment windows, and his 6-year-old daughter clung to his jacket as if letting go might cost her everything. In 72 hours, a judge would decide whether love was enough, or whether money would win like it always seemed to. Ethan had already lost sleep, pride, and any illusion that the system was fair. All he had left was time he didn't have and hope he couldn't afford. 3 nights earlier, soaked to the bone and barely standing after 2 brutal shifts, Ethan had pulled over on a dark highway for 2 stranded young women. No cameras, no witnesses. Just a tired father making one small choice when the world had taught him to keep driving. He never learned their last names. He never asked who they were. Now, as he walked into the courtroom with his hands shaking and his daughter's future on the line, Ethan looked up at the bench and felt the room tilt. The judge raised his eyes. Recognition flashed. And in that instant, Ethan realized the truth. The man about to judge his worth as a father was the same man whose daughters he had saved in the storm. What happens next doesn't just decide a custody case. It exposes power, class, and how one act of kindness can turn the balance of a life. Watch to the end. Subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales now, because stories like this don't let go once they start. The courtroom lights hummed softly above Ethan Cole as he sat alone at the defendant's table. The polished wood around him looked too clean, too perfect for a man who'd spent the morning scrubbing grease off his hands with cold sink water because he couldn't afford gloves. Outside the tall windows, dawn was just beginning to stretch pale light over the city, but inside, the air carried the weight of judgment long before anyone spoke. "Mr. Cole," his public defender whispered, leaning close. "Remember, answer plainly. No emotion, just facts. They will use every slip against you." Ethan nodded, though a knot was forming in his throat. He kept replaying Alice's question from the night before. "Daddy, are they going to take me away?" She had said it so softly he almost didn't hear her. He had held her tighter than he meant to, terrified she could feel the tremor in his hands. Now the door behind the bench opened, and Judge Benjamin Whitmore stepped inside. The force of that moment staggered Ethan, not because he feared the man but because he knew him. Or rather, he knew the man's daughters. The faces that had stared back at him that stormy night, terrified, drenched and grateful, now flickered in his mind like a warning and a promise. The judge didn't look at him. Not yet. He simply sat, adjusted his glasses, and signaled for the proceedings to begin. "Petitioner's counsel," the judge said. "You may proceed with your argument." Lena rose from her seat with a confidence that had once pulled Ethan toward her like a tide. Now he saw it differently. Not confidence but entitlement. She wore a fitted navy dress, her hair glossy, her expression polished. She looked like someone who belonged in places he swept floors after closing. Her lawyer stood beside her, unfolding papers with theatrical precision. "Your Honor," Davidson began, "my client seeks full custody on the grounds that Mr. Cole, while well-intentioned, is incapable of providing a stable home. He works erratic hours, frequently leaves the child with elderly neighbors, and has demonstrated poor financial planning. A 6-year-old deserves security. She deserves consistency. She deserves a responsible parent." Ethan inhaled sharply. The words felt like blows, but he forced himself to sit still. Davidson continued, "We will present evidence that Mr. Cole's income is insufficient to meet basic needs, and that his environment is less than ideal." A few people in the gallery murmured. The judge raised a hand, silencing the room, but his gaze briefly flickered toward Ethan, neutral, unreadable. When it was their turn, Ethan's lawyer stood. "Your Honor, the petitioner presents a narrative of instability, but offers no proof of neglect, danger, or emotional harm. In fact, the evidence suggests the opposite. Mr. Cole attends every school meeting. He works multiple jobs to provide for his daughter. He has no criminal record, no history of violence, and no behavioral complaints from teachers or neighbors. What he lacks in money, he makes up in devotion." The words were good, strong even, but they didn't capture the late nights, the skipped meals, the worn-out shoes Ethan chose so Alice could have new school supplies. They didn't capture the love. Then Davidson smirked. "Your Honor, we would like to call our witness, Mrs. Lena Cole." Ethan felt his pulse spike as Lena took the stand, placing her hand on the Bible with practiced poise. Her voice was calm, composed, like a woman auditioning for the role of Mother of the Year. "My daughter has been showing signs of stress," she said softly. "She's anxious. She bites her nails. She cries when I drop her off after visitation. I love her, Your Honor. I want to give her the life she deserves. A life without chaos." Kiss. The word echoed through Ethan's head. When Davidson invited her to elaborate, Lena added, "Ethan means well, but he's overwhelmed. He forgets important things. Birthdays, school events, bills. Alice told me she sometimes waits alone when he comes home late." "That's a lie," Ethan muttered before he could stop himself. "Mr. Cole," the judge warned gently, "you will remain silent until addressed." Her voice cracked. "Please, I need my daughter." "What your daughter needs," the judge interrupted, "is a parent who shows up for her, not one who manipulates the system to cover her own failures." Davidson closed his briefcase without a word. He knew the case was lost. And in that moment, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in months. Vindication. Not triumph over Lena's suffering, but relief that the truth finally had a place to stand. The judge concluded, "This court awards full custody to Mr. Ethan Cole. Effective immediately." Lena collapsed into her chair, trembling. Not because she lost a battle, but because the consequences she had evaded for years had finally caught her. She wasn't just defeated. She was exposed. And the real punishment, court-ordered rehab, supervised visitation, loss of legal credibility, had only just begun. But what happened next would take the story somewhere no one in that courtroom expected. Because the judge wasn't done with the truth. And the truth wasn't done with Lena. Ethan stepped out of the courthouse with a quiet steadiness he hadn't felt in years. The world outside seemed brighter, not because the sun had shifted, but because something inside him finally had. He wasn't the man who walked in that morning, exhausted, afraid, bracing for loss. He was someone who had stood his ground, spoken his truth, and watched justice land exactly where it belonged. When he reached his car, he paused, noticing a small reflection in the passenger window. Not his tired face. Alice's drawing he'd taped there weeks ago. Crooked house. 2 stick figures. A yellow sun floating above them. It wasn't much, just a child's sketch, but now it felt like a promise finally kept. Later that evening, while Alice colored at the kitchen table, Ethan watched her with a sense of wonder. She laughed at something only she understood, and the sound settled into the room like a new beginning. Maybe life wouldn't suddenly become easy. Maybe the bills would still pile up, and the long shifts wouldn't disappear. But the fear that once shadowed every decision had lifted, replaced by something sturdier. Clarity, purpose, and the understanding that truth had its own kind of strength. He glanced at the doorway, remembering the storm, the twins, the judge, and every small step that had led them here. Sometimes the road forward wasn't built by luck, but by choosing decency when no one was watching. And as Alice ran into his arms, her laughter filling the room, Ethan realized the real victory wasn't the ruling. It was the life they were finally free to build. If this story moved you, help it reach someone who might need it. Like the video, share it, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so we can continue bringing moments like this to life.